Good evening. It's now 7 p.m. This is the November 20th meeting of the Town of Warren Zoning Board of Review. I am the chair, Andrew Ellis. To my right is Jason Rainone, the vice chair, Jason Nystrom, Bert Rodriguez, Michael Elves, David Francis, and Chuck Thibodeau on the far end. Mr. Elves and Mr. Francis are our usual alternate members. They will participate, ask questions, but they will not be voting unless one of the regular members has to recuse themselves, except for the first two applications, which are continued from the previous meeting. And on that application, only myself, Mr. Rodriguez, Mr. Elves, and Mr. Thibodeau will be participating because those were the only four members who were on that original meeting. We do have a quorum of members present. So the first matter is approval of the minutes that were circulated for the October 16th meeting. Any discussion, or is there a motion on the minutes?
Motion to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So the minutes are approved. Firstly, we have old business, application 2425, Adriano Andrade, owner and applicant, 3 Monist Street. Plat map 13B, lot 98, request for a special use permit to construct a mixed-use building in the village business district. Good evening. I'll just give a synopsis of where we left off with this. The last meeting, we had requested that your engineer be present to
Nathan.
Yeah, to answer specific questions relating to the drainage of the property, stormwater issues, and any other relevant concerns. Would you like your engineer to be qualified as a subject matter expert in this field?
Yes.
All right, so you want to come up and state your name, please?
Nathan Chauffet.
And what are your credentials, please?
The project engineer with Principe Company. I work under Tom Principe, 27 Secondant Ridge Drive, Tiverton, Rhode Island.
And how many years have you been employed in such a capacity?
Just about 3 years.
3 years. Have you done other projects relating to specifically stormwater and drainage?
That is correct.
Do you hold any certifications or licenses?
Engineering and training. I do not. I'm engineering and training.
You're engineering training under Mr. Principe.
That is correct.
What is the board's pleasure? Should he just be considered a witness? Or do we want to say that he's a subject matter expert?
Is it with Mr. Principe's advice and consent that you're making this, or is this an independent?
Correct. Everything I do is under Tom Principe. All my work, we go over every site plan.
So would you say that it's supported by the firm itself?
Correct.
Anyone else have any thoughts? Do we want to accept his testimony then as representing Principe Engineering as a subject matter expert in this field? Someone want to make a motion to that effect?
I'll make a motion that we accept him as an expert underneath Principe's business license.
My second.
All right, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, so you will be accepted as a subject matter expert in this area relating to the application.
Mhm.
So has your client advised you of the concerns that were raised at the previous meeting?
Correct. Would you like me to speak on the design
Yes.
first, or?
If you can briefly go over the design and then
Sure.
highlight what the concerns are as
Yep.
you understand them.
Absolutely. So the design is a rain garden. That is for all increased impervious area. That's all roof area. All runoff will be controlled by gutters, downspouts directed to the rain garden. The rain garden is designed for a 100-year storm, and that is per DEM regulations. That is an 8.6-inch rainstorm over a 24-hour period. That is their max rainstorm per their stormwater manual.
So it's 8.6 inches of rain within a 24-hour period.
Correct.
And that's the maximum per the manual.
Per the manual, that is correct. We're also using a design infiltration rate of 0.27 inch per hour. So the lowest, like a silt loam material. So that is the lowest infiltration rate also in DEM's manual. And so using those two in our calculations, we've determined that the post-development flows are equivalent to the pre-development flows.
All right, so there was some concern expressed about if the rain garden reached its full capacity. It seems from the plans there is a discharge in that.
Correct.
Can you speak to how that would work and what would happen to the water in the event that the rain garden was overwhelmed?
Correct. So I have an overflow weir to the northeast corner of the rain garden. There's a little X 18.71. That is where the stormwater will overflow past a 100-year storm, which is quite a vast amount of water.
And so in your opinion, what, if any, impact would that have on the adjoining property on that northeast corner should the rain garden exceed its capacity?
So this design is, like I mentioned, it's the same as pre and post conditions. So we have maxed out this rain garden to control pre-development conditions. So any increase impervious roof runoff, that's all being controlled on site and no extra runoff to the neighbor.
So I think we've heard that the existing condition currently is unsatisfactory. So if we're just returning it to its pre-condition post-development, those are the concerns that have been raised by the neighbors that as the lot exists today, there are drainage issues and they're concerned about
the neighboring lot or our lot?
The neighbors have expressed concern. We have did you see the letter that was submitted by Seaver Anderson?
Oh, yeah. So, we are to design accordingly to our site. I guess it's more, I understand there's, the neighbor expressed some concern. We're not increasing at all the drainage runoff to their site per this design.
There was also a concern raised about water coming off of Monast Street onto your property. What's being done to stop that water from migrating onto other properties?
So the driveway is a pervious design, so it will be controlled within the pervious driveway.
So the driveway, your intent is that it then absorbs the water coming off Monast Street.
Correct.
To stop it from traveling across the property.
Correct.
And the infiltration capability of that pervious or permeable driveway surface is a separate quantity of water that can infiltrate the ground from the calculations associated with the rain garden?
Correct.
There was also a question raised about there's some changes to the contours in order to create the rain garden. And there was concern of a large tree on the neighboring property that its root system would likely extend onto the subject property. And if the grading to change the contours could potentially harm or damage that tree.
Which tree is in reference?
It's the one labeled 40-foot tree that's right in the middle of the north property line. And there was a discussion about could the contours be shaped in such a way as to avoid the likely extent of the root system of that tree.
So as it stands right now, there's no grading within a 10-foot proximity to the tree, but if there's more concern, we can definitely increase the separation.
There's no, so the plan as you're presenting it, there's no grading within 10 feet of the tree?
The root system, you would, when you're grading around a tree, the reg is to,
I think the concern was the dark black lines represent the new contours, and the first
Oh.
new contour is very close.
so
to the tree.
that is compost filter sock. That's erosion
No,
control.
sorry, not up here.
You mind if I-
Yeah. Not along the perimeter. This first contour right
Oh.
there that appears to be somewhat close to the tree.
Yeah, so that can be confirmed in field and pulled away, no problem.
All right, so you could make
Yes,
modifications.
oh, yeah, yep,
Based on the extent of the root system, as the neighbor was concerned about the damage or loss of that tree, and then that could exacerbate water problems, and the tree isn't there to absorb water and whatnot. I don't think he wants to have to cut the tree down.
understood. Yep, that can be pulled.
So they would like assurances that appropriate construction safeguards will be used to protect that from damage.
Correct, and I can make a note on the plan too.
Okay, so we can address that. Those that were here, what other concerns did you want to have clarified by the engineer? Nothing? Reviewing the notes from the last meeting. There was an, on here. There was some concern raised by the neighbor about an existing plastic drainage pipe, or an existing 12-inch pipe the town had installed somewhere near the property line to deal with drainage issues. Is that going to be disturbed in any way as a result of this construction?
As far as I know, the owner next door, he told me that that was not installed by the town. That was installed by the previous owner and the guy who sold the land to him.
Sorry, who are you referring to, Mr. Seaver or someone else? Is Mr. Seaver?
No, next door, four miles.
Who's that? Do you know?
The neighbor is Keith DeJoly, and his wife, who is the daughter of the property owner of who sold that land to the previous owner, which was the landscaper Frank.
Okay, so
They installed
whoever,
that themselves.
whoever pipe it is for drainage, is there going to be any disturbance to that pipe or
Well, that
any?
pipe needs to be fixed.
Well,
That pipe, you could see it in the property that it's been there from someone who didn't know what they were doing.
The pipe is not on your property, right? It's next to it.
It's on the edge of mine and Mr. Seavers.
We don't, so what I'm asking is, as a result of you're building this rain garden,
Yeah,
Right.
the
Is-
pipe is just a black pipe like that someone goes picks up at Home Depot and they just placed it there.
it's just laying on the ground.
Yeah, it's pretty much just laying on the ground. Like I said, the previous owner just put it there. It's not even like something to fix a problem.
So let me ask the question this way. As part of your regrading and your efforts here to create the rain garden, is there any plan to do anything with regard to that existing pipe?
Yeah, we're gonna fix the issue as best as we can and keep all the water off his property. That is a low point in that corner too. Like all the water is not just on his property too, it's my property too. We're gonna fix the grading, which is a low point, but I'm not gonna fix his grading on his low point of his yard.
Correct, but
I don't think you're answering the question, though. The chair is asking about the pipe. He just wants to know exactly what's going to happen with the pipe.
are you gonna remove it? What are you gonna do with
If
it?
it goes to nothing, I'm gonna remove it. It's someone who didn't know what they were doing, like unprofessionally, and just put it in there. So it depends when I dig it up, it's like if it gets dug up, we're gonna see where it goes to.
So there's nothing on the plans currently, and correct me if I'm wrong, that about dealing with this pipe or doing anything, fixing it, doing anything to it. Is that accurate? The plans don't currently reflect that.
No,
There's no
'cause
change.
The rain, we're not changing anything with that pipe. But if it's not doing anything, then it's not doing anything. It's really not helping the situation, because that pipe is not doing anything.
Is that pipe located on your property, on the property that you're constructing on?
It's located like right on the edge of like where the fence was installed by Mr. Anderson.
Between the properties?
Yes,
On the property line?
yes.
So it's not abundantly clear without a very precise survey then as to whether the pipe might be entirely on your property, entirely on your neighbor's property, or maybe it's straddling the property line.
Yeah, I mean, someone who, like I said, the previous owner just placed it there. That was trying to fix it himself.
I mean, I
That's
guess-
not coming from the town.
Let me ask your engineer. Do you have any knowledge of this pipe, or from your own observation, what you believe its intended purpose was? And if you think that the regrading of this area is going to impact it in any way?
So there are two pipes labeled.
I see one, it says 12-inch plastic pipe.
Correct.
XFP
And then you can
north
see
east.
the survey team did pick up, there's a 2-inch pipe between proposed contours 16 and 17. I can point it out. I don't know if I need to be in front of the mic.
Okay, hold on. There's a two, yeah, if you want to just come over and point out where the
Yep.
2-inch pipe is. So there's a 2-inch, actually, I think this might say 4-inch. Oh, no, it does say
2-inch pipe.
It's hidden by the contour. So there's a 2-inch pipe that appears to be entirely on your client's property. And then the 12-inch pipe looks to be, the invert at least, looks to be on the neighbor's property.
Correct.
So where that invert is, which direction is this pipe traveling? And is it traveling onto your client's property, or is it going in the other direction? We don't know anything about it.
The 2-inch pipe is going from west to east, so it's opening to the east. And then the 12-inch plastic pipe is opening to the west.
Yeah, so the tension was the neighbor put that pipe facing that 12-inch pipe.
All right, so the 2-inch pipe is definitely gonna have to be altered to do the contours that you show, right? So what is your plan for that? Are you gonna remove it and then the contours are gonna solve the problem? Or you're gonna put in a new pipe? What's being done with regard to that?
Yeah, remove the pipe.
So the 2-inch pipe, you're gonna remove. And so the other pipe, if it's entirely on the neighbor's property, then you would not be able to do anything with
Do
it,
not touch that pipe.
right? So that pipe would stay where it is,
Correct.
okay? And so it's your expert opinion then that the 2-inch pipe on your client's property is serving no useful purpose, and or the rain garden would be dealing with the drainage in lieu of that pipe.
Correct. Rain garden is all roof drainage. And then we have the pervious driveway controlling itself.
So the rain garden is taking all of the roof drainage.
Correct.
Is the rain garden taking in any surface drainage from the property itself?
That's calculated in the calculations. Correct.
That's also in there. So any surface water could potentially make its way into the rain garden,
Correct.
and all the roof drainage is going into the rain garden.
Correct. Via gutters, downspouts.
Yeah. And so the rain garden is recessed down into the ground by, what do we have, a couple of feet here? 17, a foot and a
Yeah.
half or something?
Yep.
And so that would tend to have any water that's accumulating on the property would be heading down into the rain garden
From the building side.
from the building side.
Correct.
From the property line side, water will also be flowing down into the rain garden
This is to the property to the
to
north.
to the north.
So there's a little bit of, so there's a berm that's created
Yeah.
there. That's to hold and block all of the rest. So there is a little, slope portion, but that is being controlled. Sorry, the roof.
So you've got 16,
Yeah,
then 17.
Right.
Yes. And that's to retain the water in the garden so it doesn't
Correct. Yep.
spill out. Okay, so we've addressed height. So you had spoken about the sand that's being placed underneath the driveway to allow, or whatever filter media you're putting under the driveway in order to allow stormwater to settle in. There was some note made that the area has a generally high water table. How far down are you excavating under the driveway to put this filter?
About 8 inches.
About 8 inches. So is that, in your expert opinion, that 8-inch depth sufficient to take the amount of rain that would likely fall on that driveway?
That's correct.
And is that also based on a 100-year storm falling on the driveway?
Correct.
All right, so in a 100-year storm, the water falling on the driveway could be absorbed in 8 inches
Would be contained. Correct.
of filtered media. And so then the intent would be, once the water enters that filtered media, it would gradually percolate back down into the soil.
Correct.
Other questions about the drainage or the site design in general for the engineer? Okay, I think that's it for the moment. Back to your client. Do you have anything else you want to add at this point before we ask for public input based on the testimony we've just had?
No.
All right. Is there anyone in the public present that would like to comment on the testimony that we've heard this evening? Okay, all right, 3 hands. Madam, I think I saw your hand first, if you'd like to come up. Or you're coming up together, or he's representing you? Or who? Okay.
Seaver Anderson at 3 South Cornell
Yes.
Ave.
Yeah, okay, so if you want to respond to what you just heard.
Yeah, so I appreciate all the work that went into the design, and I guess if the calculations add up, I mean, I'm not a professional engineer. I do work with engineers. I work in this field. I'm an environmental scientist, so I do see these things get built, and then they're built, and then the neighbor's properties, gets flooded. They don't always function properly. I'm worried about the groundwater separation. The water table is high, so I do not think that this basin is ever going to properly drain. And you're going to have a storm event, and which is often how we get bad flood. You get like a 2-inch storm. After 2-inch storm, the water table's high in the spring, and then you get a big storm. And then that's my concern, is that just the infiltration rate and the water table is that high that that basin is going to never have time to drain between storms, and it's going to be full of water. It's going to be a pond essentially all winter long. You're going down a foot. I mean, there's standing water in that area for a decent portion of the winter. So
Can I ask you a question? What is the conditions now when you get heavy rain in that area?
it's usually, there's some, it's saturated, like you walk on it, it's squishy.
So it's naturally, generally
Yeah, it's,
wet and.
if it wasn't maintained, it would be a swamp. I mean, it was historically a pond back there that the town or someone, the developer, maybe filled in, back in the 40s or 50s when this neighborhood was developed.
So we can ask the engineer when we call him back up about the construction of the bottom of that rain garden. Or do you want to, you just want to step aside and let him answer this question? So he wants to know about, will the bottom of the rain garden be able to absorb that stormwater before another storm happens, given that he's observed that there's a high water table.
That is correct. And with concerns of separation of the groundwater table, the bottom of the filter needs to sit at or above. And we're currently sitting at the groundwater table, and that's per DEM regulations in the design.
So the design is at the bottom of the rain garden.
Needs to sit at or above the groundwater
So
table.
do you have filter media under the bottom of the rain garden?
We added an additional 12-inch layer of sand for the detail to help infiltrate
Okay,
better.
so you've got 12 inches of sand below the bottom elevation of the rain.
And then the parent material would be a silt loam or the worst infiltration rate that I spoke on earlier. And how I got the size.
So then, given that you've put that sand below the 12 inches of sand, does the calculation then support that the 100-year storm would be able to be absorbed into that 12 inches of sand?
Correct. Yeah, the whole design. So the sand's just one aspect. There's the storage component I
Yeah.
talked about, and then the sand, the infiltration. It will contain a 100-year storm.
And with regard to the storage,
Mhm.
have you estimated how long will it take for the 100 years worth of rain to reabsorb into that filter media?
So that's all within our calculations with HydroCAD and setting it up with the infiltration rates provided by DEM. So that's all.
Do you know that time? Like, is it
Oh, so
2 days, a week? I mean, what does the calculation say if that was filled up to capacity?
so 8.6 inches over 24 hours it can handle.
So you mean at the end of 24 hours, there's not going to be standing water?
Correct.
So if it rains 8.6 inches in a 24-hour period,
Yep.
it can infiltrate all that within that period.
It'll
and
be
it will not-
infiltrated or contained within the basin itself. It will not be overflow.
Okay, well, I see if the basin is filled up and
Yep.
there's standing water in the basin,
Then that's when the overflow gets used.
now I'm not, how long is it gonna take for that, if the
Yep.
basin is filled to capacity,
Yep.
how long is it gonna take for that amount of water to reabsorb into the ground?
So so the infiltration rate is 0.27 inch per hour,
Okay, so if there, and how deep is the basin?
a foot and a half.
Okay, so you've got 18 inches worth, let's say
Right.
it could be filled with 18 inches of water before it gets to that spillway.
Yep.
So let's say it's about 1/4 of an inch per hour.
Yep.
Right, so it's gonna take 4 hours to get rid of 1 inch, so 4 times 18 is what, 76? So in theory, if it was filled to capacity, it would take 76 hours for that amount of water to infiltrate back into the ground.
Mhm.
All right, I think if you want to sit back down, we'll ask him if that answers his question. Does that answer?
Yeah, that
Question?
answers my question.
So I guess if there's 200-year storms within a 76-hour period, I'm not sure what to say, but based on his
No.
calculations,
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it meets the engineering standards, so I mean, I trust those calculations. I'm still concerned about it,
Yeah.
that's not gonna go away, this drainage issues, and I did try contacting the town DPW. I'm gonna, if this is something the town is gonna improve, I'm definitely gonna try and, see if someone from the town can come out and take a look at the 12-inch pipe that is entirely on my property. The invert of it, the inlet, because I think, that basin will be overflowing to that pipe, if it ever does overflow.
it appears, yeah, that the pipe is in the vicinity of the northeast corner, which is
Yeah.
where the overflow occurs should the basin ever
Yeah.
overflow.
And then it would overflow onto my property too, is the other thing.
And so when the construction documents are submitted to the building official to get the permit, he would have to review the construction documents to see that the design is compliant, and he may decide to make a site visit or something to evaluate that, to make a determination that it is being proposed in a way that's appropriate, and that during the construction, he would likely make a site visit to, ensure that it's being installed per the plans and specifications. If you haven't, I would, recommend if you want to have a conversation outside of this meeting with your neighbor and the engineer. And if there's anything, certainly about the tree, we've heard that they're going to alter the area so that it's not going to damage the root system of the tree. But if there's other concerns, maybe that's something you and your neighbor and the engineer can sort of talk about and make slight adjustments if necessary in the design.
Yep. No, understood. My only question is, does this have to go through planning board too, or is it just
No.
zoning board? No.
It would just be this board.
All right. Thank you. That's all.
Okay, thank you. All right. Next, either or both of you together. And just state your name and address for the record, please.
My name is Rita Nunes. My deed is under Carlson, 7 South Cornell Avenue, Warren,
Okay,
And I'm Todd Nunes.
my husband.
same.
Same address.
Okay, and what are your feelings on the application?
My feelings are this, that I have no engineering background whatsoever, purely financial. I do have, January will be 39 years in that house.
Mhm.
Worst case scenario, which is less than 100 years, the water has been 10 feet from my property. Okay, there are no street drainage on Monash Street.
Yep,
There is no street drainage on South Cornell. My home is built into a hill, so my back of my property, it just seeps down. When that water runs over to Cedars Land, it's gonna come over to my land. Because the pipe the town put in is not going to accommodate that water.
so with regard to the subject property, are you to the northeast of
I'm to
the,
the north, I'm on the other side of Cedars Land.
the other side, so the east side of Cedars
Correct.
Land? So your land
Why-
partially abuts the northeast corner where this,
No, I actually abut Cedars Land, all the way back.
all the way back?
Correct. Correct. Our property is damp from winter through to early summer. You need mud boots back there.
Did you say what was your deed?
It's under Carlson, Rita Carlson.
This one?
That's right.
This is the land in question. This is Seaver's land, I believe. You're right here.
Yes,
Okay. So you're on lot number 13.
yes,
So your concern is that when the water in that area backs up onto Seaver's land, it would then continue to back up onto your land.
absolutely.
And your concern is that the existing pipe that we've talked about is not functioning or improperly installed or what have you.
It is not, no, it's not completely getting that water out of back there, and that is without this 12-foot deep rain pool.
I think
So
it's 18 inches deep.
18 inches deep.
Collect. So the idea of that rain garden is that any water that gets into that corner would not run off of the applicant's land. It's going to be held on his own land until such time as that were to fill up. If you had more than 8.6 or 7 inches of rain in a 24-hour period, then the thing would reach its capacity and some water would discharge over that edge into the corner.
Correct.
But
And that will be full all winter, and that will be full in the spring when the rain comes.
so the engineering testimony that we've had,
The engineering has not lived there for 39
I
years, sir.
I
Please
understand that.
understand that.
I got a couple questions.
Yes,
Now, they're gonna remove those 2-inch pipes, or the 2 or 3s or whatever that Billy Monist actually put down there, because he's trying to drain the water off of Monash Street down to the 12-inch pipe that's on Seaver's land. Now, what's gonna happen with all the water that's coming down Monash Street? Is the town gonna put a drain in and take that water somewhere else?
so we'll have to ask the engineer because his interpretation was the 2-inch pipe that's in the area where the rain garden is now going to go was no longer relevant because the rain garden is now going to be capturing whatever water that pipe was supposedly capturing. Although I don't see on the drawing, and I don't know if we have some kind of survey that, we just see the inlets of these pipes. We don't see the actual layout of where the pipe is starting and stopping and what it's doing. And let me ask Mr. Cabral, do we have any town records with regard to any of these pipes? Because there seems to be conflicting testimony about a previous owner put them in, the town put them in, someone else.
Well, that's a little confusing. The two pipes that we're talking about go from the end of Monmouth Street down to the back of Seaver's yard that Billy Monis put in. 12-inch pipes that are on Seaver's yard that goes through our yard with another lateral, all were done by the town of Warren to get rid of that water, because we actually had water up to our back door when we had a storm one time. And that was probably, what, 20 years ago?
So it may be if you can just step aside. So it may be helpful from an engineering standpoint if you do get a survey or something to actually to lay out these pipes.
Yep.
You know, to see where do they start, where do they stop, and what do they connect to? So when you're doing this work for the rain garden, there's a full understanding of, you know, what you may or may not be impacting.
Can I just?
Yeah.
This kind of sounds like it's a town problem, just because there's no drainage. And this is the way these people are getting hurt, through me building this property. It's not because it's me, it's because the town, and they want to be heard. And this is the only way they're gonna be heard, is if they come to this meeting and not want me to build something. It's not, they don't want me to build it. It's because they have a drainage problem.
Correct.
And there's no drainage on Monis, and there's no drainage on South Cornell. That's at a high point. And then it goes down elevation by probably 4 feet. So all the water is gonna go down there. To me, it's a town issue. But you want me to keep ditching out money to pay to fix a town problem when I pay taxes in the town of Warren. These people pay taxes. What is the tax dollars going to? If the town ain't gonna fix it, I gotta fix it. I'm gonna have to engineer with this 2-inch pipe. Don't you got it? If the town put it in place, you guys should have it all on the map where you guys placed it. Not me have to pay my engineer $1,000 to reconstruct and go. That's a town issue. It's not my issue.
Yeah. So let's say here that if these pipes were installed by the town, then there should be some record of it that your engineer can evaluate. Regardless of who installed it, if it's on your property and your excavation is going to disturb it, you then have an obligation to whatever you disturb, you have to make sure you're accounting for how do you handle whatever that was doing.
And I will. But the town has to get on board, not me keep on spending kinds of money to get it. If it's in the town map, it should be in the town map. Then you guys should have it all engineered out. Not me keep paying the engineer.
That is research your engineer needs to do. To go to the
Ditching out
town.
more money. Is it in the engineer? Find out if it's in the plan. I'll come to the town and pick it up. And if if you guys have it documented, which you should, if it's all thing, then I could come and pick it up. Mr. Anderson has been trying to get a hold of the town for 2 years. And now all of a sudden I build this thing. This is the way he's heard, because I come over here and nobody's picked up his phone calls or nobody's answered. So he comes over here and says no, which I understand. The town never picked up. Now it becomes on me. It becomes the guy who's paying taxes. And the town doesn't want, they don't want the responsibility of doing it.
So that is purely the purview of the Public Works Department. The standard that we have to hold you to is your project cannot make the conditions any worse than they currently are. And so based on your engineer's testimony, his design is indicating that any water that lands on your property is going to be contained on your property.
Yes, correct.
Not go on to other properties, making it worse than it currently is. There may still be times when water does escape if the rain garden overflows, but as it is now, there's no collection of any water. So his testimony is that he's addressing all the water that's on your property. Water that's coming from the street and town-created structures or whoever created these other drainage structures, we can't make it any worse. So with regard to the 2-inch pipe, if that's doing something and you need to verify what it's doing by getting a map from the town or talking to Public Works, whatever that's doing, your design has to make sure that it's accounting for that, that whatever water that pipe dealt with, the rain garden has to deal with in a similar manner. So you can't make more water go off the property.
Okay.
I mean, we empathize with where you're coming from. What we're looking at is not trying to make anything worse than what it is. So if you can control the footprint of where you're constructing so that it's not making anything worse, that's really what we're trying to figure out here. And the fact that the water and the land is what it is, that's a geographical thing that's been known. So for whomever, you're abutting right now, it's gonna be cedar, you're gonna get less rainwater theoretically through this engineered plan than you would normally. And then that 18-inch of runoff at that limit is going to would have already been on your land if this intervention wasn't in place. So anything that they're doing, we're trying to make sure they're controlling so that it doesn't make anything worse. In fact, it should theoretically get better. Is it going to solve your problem? No. Sounds like there's a greater issue here. Sounds like geographically, things are not exactly perfect. So I think that's where you take it, then you take it from there,
He's basically saying that he's gonna control it better on his land. The stuff that's, sorry, I had some surgery work. So the water that comes from Montset, that's coming onto that land, that's going onto the thing, that's not his issue, that's what he's saying. He's saying he's gonna make it better for his land. It's 100-year acre, they're saying it. So it's gonna go from where the problem is now to control 100-year acre, okay? The stuff that comes from Montset that's going onto the land and going out to everybody else's land. I mean, he's basically saying, I can't control that unless the town gets involved.
So theoretically, it should get better. Is it gonna be fixed? Probably not. But at least you'll have parcels of land before it gets to you corrected and fixed. And then you're gonna have to sort it out from there. This isn't the objective of this board to make sure that groundwater is moving around. It's, we do dimensional variances and special use permits. So, it's a different context and a different place to take this, but at least this will give you the ability to start somewhere and to mitigate it. Unfortunately, we don't have any other power other than that.
As long as it doesn't get any worse.
It won't get worse because it's very low back there.
Well, through science and through engineering, we have testified from the company that they're going to mitigate it. And all we can do is look at that science and validate it by taking that expert witness testimony and then, making sure that the plans read
And
according to
39
that
years living in
science.
that area is not any type of an expert
I'm sorry?
opinion. At 39 years of living there and seeing the water build up every single winter.
I
I'm not
think
trying to
what-
say there isn't a problem with your land, but for 39 years, you've had a problem.
No.
Right now, well, you're saying that you've had a problem for 39 years. This gentleman is trying to develop property that he's paying taxes on, and he's willing to actually invest money into an engineer to actually mitigate the issue as best he can in the land that he has. So you can't ask for anything other than that out of a fellow taxpayer who's, trying to, live his life. So there's nothing more we can do other than try and see that things are fair and things are equitable. And that's really where we're at right now.
So what we've heard from the testimony is that any water on the applicant's land is going to be prevented to the greatest extent possible from leaving the applicant's land, which in theory is improving it from the current condition. Because right now, there is no structure that contains the water. The water just flows across the property and collects where it collects and spreads out. The design that's before us is intended to stop a good portion of that water, so there should be some improvement. And as we've said, this may not solve other underlying issues, but the burden on the applicant is to not make it any worse than it currently is. So the design that's been presented purports to capture as much water as possible, to not make it any worse, but there still may be other underlying issues that have to be addressed separately. So again, you can get the town Department of Public Works out there. You can have them look at it. The plans have to go to the building inspector for approval before a permit is granted. So that has to be reviewed if the drainage is compliant with all the building codes and regulations. It has to be inspected during construction. So there are safeguards in place to ensure that this design as presented is going to be constructed. But we have to understand that there's only so much he can do on his own property, because there may be grading that has to be done on other pieces of land in order to fully resolve this. But he doesn't have the ability to do work on other people's property. So I think what we're hearing is the engineering design is what can be implemented on this piece of property to deal with its stormwater, but there may be other issues that have to be addressed on other pieces of property, and that's outside of the applicant's responsibility. So I think the takeaway is, for whatever you may or may not think it's worth, the intent is to not make the situation worse than it is today, and in fact, improve it to some extent. And I think that's as far as we can go in our authority. And so if there are other concerns, you'll have to take it with other avenues through the town, if there's more action you think is necessary. Do you have any other points you'd like to raise? Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who wants to comment on this application? Not seeing anyone, we can bring it back to the applicant and your engineer if the board has any follow-up questions. Not hearing any. I think in summary, if I'm correct, and if I'm not, you can correct me, that your intent with this design is to mitigate the stormwater situation to the extent possible on your applicant's property. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yes. And the intent is to not make it any worse than what already exists.
Correct.
And your testimony is that, in fact, you believe it will be an improvement over what exists today?
Correct.
And are you willing to commit to any disturbance to any existing piping on your applicant's property needs to be coordinated with town records and, you know, your engineering design to ensure that you're not disturbing an existing condition that's going to worsen some problem or negate some system that's already in place?
Correct. We will address it.
All right. Anyone else, anything else on this application? Is there a motion with regard to this application for a special use permit for the proposed construction? And again, only the four that were here, one of the four have to make the motion, and only those four will be voting upon it.
I make a motion to approve.
Okay. So in the motion, we'll just have to go through each of the four standards of the special use permit and cite the findings of fact based on the testimony that we've heard and the application materials that were submitted that support each of those four findings. So if you want to go ahead and explain, we can go through them one at a time. That the first standard is that it's compatible with the neighboring land use.
Oh, I'm sorry. So, yep, I make a motion to approve applicant number 24-25, Adriano Andrade, owner and applicant of 3 Mondstadt Street. Plat map 13B, lot 98, request for a special use permit to construct a mixed-use building in the Village Business Zoning District.
All right, so now for each of those standards, you can present what testimony you believe is relevant to support those standards.
So the special use will be compatible with the neighboring land use with the property to provide housing with 2 units with a 3 garages in the bottom, I believe it was. 3 garages that will be used for storage of electrical equipment by the owner. He also stated that this would be compatible to other buildings in the area as it's considered a mixed-use building. The special use will not create a hazard in the neighborhood. Applicant has taken the necessary measures and precautions to mitigate the rainfall that's indicated in the map here.
We did cite that there was expert testimony from an engineer to support.
Yeah, we'll also indicate that there was expert testimony presented here today before the board. For number 3, the special use permit will be compatible with community comprehensive plan, which the applicant indicated it would, as it's creating housing in the town. And for number 4, public convenience and welfare will be served, as it will be, as once again, housing will be provided in the town of Warren.
Okay, are there any conditions or amendments to the motion? I would add that the condition about disturbing any existing drainage structures on your applicant's property be coordinated with the town, and that the disturbance of such structures would lead to no negative impacts with regard to drainage, and you would have to mitigate any impacts that were to occur. Are there any other conditions or amendments?
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I believe last meeting, there was testimony that it was going to be used strictly for storage, for electrical storage.
Correct.
Just put that as a condition, therefore it cannot be used for anything other than storage.
Yeah, so we'll have a condition that the garage spaces are used only for storage. No business can be conducted out of these garage spaces. This is purely for the owner's storage purposes.
Do we need to mention the nature of the driveway so that it will?
Oh, we can. Per the plans submitted, you have to construct your driveway of pervious material to aid in the rainwater absorption. Condition would be that the drainage and grading plan would be subject to approval at the building inspector's office to ensure that it's in compliance with all building codes and standards. Is there anything else?
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes.
you can add that the impervious pavement is going to need to be maintained.
Okay, so the pervious pavement will need to be maintained so that it continues to act in the appropriate fashion. And that basically means you can't have dirt, sand, debris clogging up the pores of the pavement. It's going to have to be vacuumed and cleaned. You also cannot put down driveway sealer that's going to close up the pores of that pavement, because then it will no longer function as intended. So it'll be your responsibility, after the winter and there's been sand or whatever put down, it's going to have to be cleaned. So you're going to have to maintain that pervious paving so that it performs the function it was designed for. And we would also say that there should be no other impervious areas on the property beyond what is shown on the plan that's been presented. All right, so you can't add another concrete patio or something that's not shown on here that's going to cause extra stormwater to collect. You can only do what is here that your engineering design has been approved for.
Maintain the tree.
Oh, yeah, yes, the tree, thank you. That construction safeguards will be taken to maintain a safe area protecting the extent of the root system of the tree on the property to the north, so that the tree is not damaged or killed during the process of construction. Anything else? All right, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so it's approved 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the next matter, also under old business, which will again be the same for board members voting on, is application 2427 Thomas R. Gordon, owner and applicant, 98 Twisted Road, plat map 16, lot 316, request for special use permit to unmerge the lot to create two lots of record in R40 zoning district. Good evening. I'll just give, you are Mr. Gordon, correct?
Good evening. Yes, Thomas Gordon, 98 Twisted Road.
So I'll just give a synopsis of where we left off the last time.
Okay,
Yeah,
if I may, could I just pass these out?
okay, you've got a
also?
handout, all
Yes.
right, so, well, I'm giving that, this good news. You want to give one to the clerk as well? Just give
I'll give her
one,
one.
we can share, it's fine.
I'm able to exhibit A.
That's fine. So, we'll review this, when we, get to the testimony, but where we left off, the last time was that the proposed, unmerger of these lots needed to meet the 4 standards of the special use permit. The board seemed to be in general consensus, that there was evidence to support standard 1, that it's compatible with the neighboring land use, that nothing about the unmerger would make it uncompatible. The special use would not create a hazard. There seemed to be consensus that nothing about unmerging this was inherently going to cause a hazard in and of itself. Then we got to number 3, that it's compatible with the community comprehensive plan. There was some debate on that, to what about unmerging it, just in the simple act of unmerger, was compatible with the comprehensive plan. And then there was the most skepticism over number 4, that the public convenience and welfare would be served. It was felt, based on the testimony presented, that simply unmerging the lot provided no benefit to the public convenience and welfare in and of itself. And so we asked the applicant to come back and provide additional materials that would help support item 3 and particularly item 4, so we could have findings of fact that demonstrated it was compatible with standards. So if you'd like to now explain the additional materials, please.
Yes, the additional materials, I brought material to support all the special use standards as we'll go through them. And I'd like to thank the board for allowing me to get this extra material and look into these standards more in depth for my family here. So I'll go through A. They will be compatible with the neighboring land uses. The unmerging of Lot A would shrink the size of any possible structure, keeping it more compatible with the current land uses and size. As we had stated in the last meeting, Lot A is larger than both its neighboring properties to the north and to the south, keeping the property consistent with the neighboring size and use. Also keeping our current house lot in line with Twisted Road and Maple Road with 43,000 square feet of yard. Again, we would like it to be known, we did not create this non-conforming lot. This lot of record, it was already in existence on the purchase of our property. We also provided, would be the first plat map that we provided. It's the closest plat to our plat. It's called Twisted Neck plat. It was created in 1966 by the Jolies. Lots in this plat range from 28,000 to 36,000 square feet, with the last lot on that plat map being built on in 2010, which would be 3 Blackthorn Lane. We like to advise you again, this lot retained its ability to be acted on because the owner did not have a budding property and it was unable to be merged by the town like our property was merged by the town. But it was, created in the same era, plat map, directly across the street from our plat map, and all those lots would be able to be, they were all acted on. So that's standard A about the compatibility. We'll move on to standard B. Will not create a nuisance or hazard in the neighborhood. The unmerging of Lot A will not create a nuisance or hazard in the neighborhood. Rhode Island General Law 2022 S 2623 allows for the creation of an accessory dwelling on Lot A. We're able to place a two-story accessory structure on this property currently with 8,374 square feet of lot coverage, with only 10 feet of offsets on the property lines in all directions. Saving could be rented to anybody, not just our family members. This would be without any board approvals or public input, simply a building plan, approved septic design, stormwater management plan that would keep the rainwater on the property and neighboring water off the property like we heard tonight with the previous applicant. In contrast, if these lots were unmerged, it would scale down what could actually be placed on Lot A if it's unmerged. With the lots unmerged, we'd be limited to 5,366.25 square feet of lot coverage on Lot A, with side yard setbacks of 20 and a quarter feet, a rear yard setback of 40 and a half feet, and front yard setback of 27 feet. That would be a second document there that shows you the lot coverage, lot calculator.
Just in summary on that point, it's your contention that if the lots were to remain merged together, the taking in the total area of the merged lot, a much larger, more imposing structure could by right be built on those lots.
Yes, sir.
And so your premise is that by separating the two lots, it would allow structures of a more diminutive nature to be built on each one that you feel is more in keeping with the overall character of the other homes in the area.
Correct.
Okay.
So we move on to C for the standards, that they are compatible with the comprehensive community plan. The merging of Lot A is compatible with the comprehensive plan. Warren's 1992 comprehensive plan, which was amended in 2003, stresses sustaining a diverse housing stock. Plan calls for a policy 1, to support the development of housing that is affordable to all Warren residents, with actions such as 1.3, revising zoning provisions to facilitate sons and daughters acquiring lots for starter housing, among other actions for seniors and residents with disabilities. And that's, again, attached and highlighted on your packet from the comprehensive plan. And then we move on to D, the public convenience and welfare will be served. Whether Lot A is kept as an empty lot, contains a house or any other structure, it will be generating tax revenue for the town and its people, but only if it's unmerged. Also, if a home is built, it would increase Warren's housing stock and ability for families to stay in Warren, such as our own family. The unmerging of this lot would provide any number of ways for our family to stay closer together while keeping our finances separate. For example, if either of our parents decided to move next door, this unmerging would make it possible to do so without having to merge our finances. Same if our children would like to build a starter home near us, they could gain their own equity next door without sharing a parcel of land that can only be sold together. Lastly, my wife and I would have the option to build a retirement home on the property and convey our current home to our children in the future. There are any number of ways that this unmerging could help our family stay in the community. Due to the current housing market, interest rates, it's very hard to purchase a home in Warren. We're just looking for the same opportunity as 3 Maple Road. This non-conforming property was never merged, even though the same owners had 2 larger abutting properties. For some unknown reason, this property was able to be bought and sold without having to go in front of zoning like we are today. The same property received a variance to build their home due to its dimensional constraints caused by wetlands on the property by the same board unanimously. That's also attached and highlighted here in the packets I provided.
Yep.
This lot is slightly smaller compared to our Lot A and smaller than all its abutting lots within 200 feet. That's also in that packet. It shows that it's the smallest lot within 200 feet radius of its abutters. Once again, our Lot A is larger than the abutting properties to the north and the south. Lot A also does not have the presence of wetlands as shown in the last attached document there.
So in summary on that point, it's your testimony that by unmerging the lot, it's going to open up an opportunity to improve the housing stock of the town and meet some of the goals that you've cited from the comprehensive plan about diversity of housing and aging in place, in-law places, places for starter homes, things of that nature.
Yes, sir.
All right, so your intent then, with regard to your plan to unmerge the lots, is that you're intending to have an opportunity present itself that this is going to support the housing goals of the town of Warren.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We're looking for opportunity, obviously, for our family, for future goals. We're just trying to set them in place and in line at this point in time.
Okay. Does the board have any questions of this applicant about the additional materials that were presented to support the standards that are required?
I'll present.
Okay. I was asked, is anyone in the public here that wants to comment on this application? Not seeing anyone. So bring it back to the applicant. Thank you for taking the time to prepare the additional materials and to clearly present what your goals are with regard to this unmerger. I think that was the main sticking point the last time, that it was an unmerger in theory, but there wasn't a clear outcome that you were looking for in terms of why this needed to be unmerged. I think the documentation you've presented in the case you've made now reflects that your intent is to increase housing opportunities in the town at large and or for your family.
Yes, and I do appreciate the extra time to, sit down and actually explore and look at what, the options are and what could be done and to review these standards. I did not have these standards to go in front of, and we had some other family matters we were attending to at the moment, so it wasn't my focus.
All right. So now I'll go through the board again. So we had some hesitation on those third and fourth standards. Mr. Thibodeau, are you satisfied we now have evidence to support those standards?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Elves?
All set?
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez? Yes. And I say for myself, yes, I think we now have documented evidence based on what you presented that can support findings relating to those four standards.
I appreciate it. I appreciate your time also.
Is there any other questions or discussions before we go to a motion? Would someone like to make a motion on this application?
I can't remember a really hard time. If there's somebody else on the board that can do it.
Chuck, do you want to take this one?
I should be in bed right now. I only came to this meeting so you can do this.
Is there any way to, just approve the documentation as is?
Well, I mean, I can make the motion. It's a little unconventional, but it's not impossible that I can make the motion. So I will move approval of application 2427, Thomas R. Gordon, owner and applicant, 98 Twisted Road, plat 16 lot 316, requesting a special use permit to unmerge the lot to create two lots of record in the R40 zone district. On approving this special use, we find that it will be compatible with the neighboring land uses. The neighboring land uses are residential in character, and the applicant has stated that the unmerger of this lot, it's not going to change the residential zoning of this property. And in fact, his testimony is that the purpose of the unmerger is to create more opportunities in the town for residential uses. We find that it will not create a nuisance or hazard. The unmerger is not going to change the configuration of the property or its relationship necessarily to any other piece of property. That there's nothing being proposed in the unmerger, any kind of use that would be hazardous or create a nuisance in the area. Again, we've heard testimony that the intended goal is again to preserve the residential character of the area. And so that use in and of itself would clearly not present any sort of hazard. Third, going to be compatible with the comprehensive plan. We've had evidence submitted by the applicant citing sections of the comprehensive plan that deal with expanding access to additional housing stock of diverse natures in the town, also providing housing opportunities for younger families to make first-time home ownership attainable, and or also opportunities for older residents to age in place, not have to move out of the town of Warren. So all that evidence that's been submitted supports that the applicant's intent is to abide by the comprehensive plan and further bolster the diversity and type of housing stock potentially available in the town. Fourth, the public convenience and welfare will be served. Again, the applicant has testified and submitted materials supporting the idea that the unmerger of this lot will create an additional opportunity in this town that the public could potentially to avail themselves of. That there will be another housing opportunity in a market that is very tight currently. That's been an ongoing condition for some time. So this new opportunity has been demonstrated that it would serve to benefit public convenience and welfare for the town. So the only condition is that any development of this lot beyond the unmerger would have to conform to the appropriate zoning regulations, or if not, would have to seek a variance from this board at such time if you ever planned to develop this in any way. And that's clear to you.
Yes.
Are there any other conditions or amendments? Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, so the motion for the unmerger is passed 4-0.
Thank you very
All right,
much.
thank
Appreciate
you.
your time. Thank you.
Next, we'll be moving on to the new business, and I think Mr. Thibodeau has now departed for the evening. So for the matter of new business, the 6 remaining board members will be in place. Mr. Elves will be a voting member along with myself, Mr. Nystrom, Mr. Raynone, and Mr. Rodriguez. Mr. Francis will continue in the alternate position. This application is number 2428 at 4 Brownell Street, or at 4 Brownell Street under the 4 Brownell Street Realty Trust owner and John J. Marshall trustee applicant. Plat 16 lot 161. There's a request for a dimensional variance to construct a single family home with less than required lot width, front yard, rear yard, side yard setbacks, and greater than allowed lot coverage in the R40 residential village overlay district. Good evening, Mr. Cox. I see that you're here representing the applicant.
Good evening, Mr. Ellis, members of the board. Thank you very much. Yes, how's that for a start? Going blanking up, client's name is stupid.
Mr. Marshall?
Mr. Marshall, I know that. Anyways, I had Francis in my head, I don't know why. Mr. Marshall and his family have owned these lots. His sister owns the adjoining lot. Their objective here is to basically duplicate the house that's on site because it's an extraordinarily narrow lot at this front edge and there's an existing garage in place. The need to remove that garage exists. Now, be mindful of the fact that the whole reason we're here is that in the storms of 2022, in December of 2022, you may remember we had a series of severe storms and the structures, both the garage and the house, took severe damage from those storms. This is a house that is at the very prominence of the Tuisset Point on Brownell Street. And so it was right where the wind impact was greatest. It was originally built many, many, many years ago as a, for all practical purposes, a large summer cottage. He wishes to rebuild this structure on site. There was some debate as to whether or not we even needed to come before the board, but it was felt best because there is going to be a deeper foundation installed so that the utilities can be placed in there. We're going to keep the foundation in place. We have Jeff Slipshear here with us this evening, who's going to be the actual builder of the property to provide you with a testimony, if you wish, as to how he will be supporting the existing foundation while undercutting and supporting the shelf structure.
And is the current structure 1-story?
No, the current structure, the current house is.
Is a 2 or 1.5?
stories.
It is a 2-story.
Correct. And I apologize for the wonderful, for those of you who are architects, the wonderful rendition of a barn roof that I put on the plan. It was asked by the applicant that we show that he would like to have, the replacement garage will have a more shallowly steeped roof to have added storage up above, recognizing that his neighbor to the east rather, is in fact his sister. And in the words of George Carlin, they have stuff they want to store. So we're here before you because in part, we're going to need to, in order to rehab this house, we need to take the garage down and want the garage back.
So the current petition before us is the variance to rebuild the house or to rebuild the garage or both?
Both. In the narrative, I explain that what the objective is from a standpoint when you can see on the plan, there is actually already existing on-site water treatment system where the tanks are between the garage and the house, so it cannot be unified. The leaching field is, this has all been approved by CRMC and DEM, is in the south side of the property. So there are constraints on this site that are necessary to work around, and which is why we're before this board. We know Twisted Point being what Twisted Point is. If we go in there, having just gotten a building permit from the building official, not having come before this board, the next thing is we'll be back before this board, somebody appealing that building permit. So we want to create a proper record here that you've seen this, reviewed this, and the building official is correct in issuing the building permit.
Is the garage going back in the same location?
Exact same location.
So basically, none of the setbacks are changing from what's there today.
None of the setbacks,
or
none
the
of the
covenant.
impervious surface areas are changing.
So the footprints for both the house and the garage are staying the same.
Exactly the same.
Why?
Well, I think out of an abundance of caution.
Which is fine. It's nice I get to do something tonight.
The setbacks.
Then is it truly a variance? I mean,
Well, yes, in theory, because now we have a 3-story house here. There was a 2-story house, and the setback lines extend up until
Gotcha.
the outermost layers of the atmosphere. So the bulk of the building is now further extending into the setback area in a vertical nature, which we've on frequent occasion had that before, that there's going to be more structure within the setback, not changing the setback, but there's more bulk of mass now within the setback. than
But all
previously.
our vertical elements are within the zoning regulations. We're not
Correct.
exceeding
Still
those.
within the 35.
Correct.
They're within the regulation, but there is going to be more mass now within
That
the
is correct.
setback than what currently exists, and it has generally been the practice that when the mass of the structure increases within the setback, that a variance would be sought in order to allow that increase in mass.
That is correct.
And I think that's why we're here.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah, so it's a question of, do we feel it's appropriate to allow them to rebuild the house on the existing footprint in the garage, with really the only change being that there will be more physical mass of the house vertically within the setback than there currently is today. It's not going to extend further horizontally. It's just a matter of adding additional mass.
Mr. Marshall obviously has a relationship with his sister who would not be objecting, and he's spoken with his neighbor that is to the west, and they have no objection.
And I'll note, we didn't receive any correspondence from any neighbors purporting to object, and I'm not seeing at the present any neighbors here. I'll ask for official public comment, but it doesn't appear to be any opposition.
I will state just from personal experience, and I'm familiar with the area. I know we've had several variances on Brownell Street.
lot of the lots there are substandard in size. This lot seems to be, other than that funky pie shape, really doesn't seem to be much different. Many of the structures there are in close proximity already. And I know in the past, we dealt with, there was some concerns over fire. So Mr. Cox, when the structure is being built, would the applicant be amenable to using a fire-rated siding or cladding material?
Mr. Marshall.
You want to come up?
Come on up.
Well, I guess the question is more with respect to the building code. If
I was gonna say that's really dictated by the building code, by your proximity to the
yes. So if the building code dictates that your proximity to the property line would require fire-rated construction, would you commit to following that? You would have to.
Required.
Okay. I mean,
to get the building.
yeah, and one of the potential conditions would be that any development would have to be approved by the building inspector and the fire marshal to ensure that it's in compliance with all codes and regulations. Other questions from Mr. Cox at this time about what's being proposed? Do you have anything else you'd like to share before we ask for the public?
I feel sorry for Mr. Francis sitting next to you, Mr. Thibodeau, quite honestly. I was sitting here looking, thinking, that man should not be here. It was kind of him to come in, as you said. But no, I don't wish to prolong the evening to the book.
Okay.
Thank you for your consideration.
I'll ask if there's anyone in the public that would like to offer any input on this application. I'm not seeing any, so we'll close the public portion of the hearing. So Mr. Cox, you have any final thoughts or pieces of information you'd like to submit for our consideration?
I think you have a full package before you. We can offer testimony if you wish as to the intent here, but it is a house that's been in the family for quite a few years. We are asking for minimal relief here in terms of the replacement of the garage, as it was stated under 3273 destruction. The garage has largely been damaged anyways, so its replacement is in keeping versus we're not destroying it ourselves. It's been damaged. We need to remove it to build the house back up.
Yep. I would note that the plan presented is very reasonable and respectful, given that it's not worsening any of the conditions that exist on the property. So it's basically maintaining the status quo with regard to the property's non-conformance, with the exception that we're just going up a little bit higher in the bulk of the building, still within the height limits.
That is correct.
Okay. So any other discussion, or is someone prepared with a motion on this application?
I can make a motion to approve application 24-28 for Brownell Street Realty Trust owner and John J. Marshall trustee applicant. For Brownell Street, plat map 16, lot 161, request for dimensional variance to construct a single-family home with less than the required lot width, front yard, rear yard, side yard setbacks, and greater than the allowed lot coverage in an R40 residential village overlay zoning district. In approving the assorted variances, we will note that the hardships are due to the unique characteristics of the subject land or structure and not to the general characteristics necessary. Under these circumstances, this is an unusually shaped lot in a community known for unusually shaped lots. It is also a very small lot relative to even some of the adjacent lots. It is a two-structure lot, making it an even more cramped space. And with one of the lot lines being angled, it is inevitable that dimensional variances would be required. We will note that we have taken testimony. The newly built three-story home and single-story garage will be conforming to the existing foundations of both structures, and that all setbacks will remain as currently existing on the property. The garage, it has been noted, is currently damaged and would need to be replaced anyway in order to remain functional. As such, the removal of that garage to be able to functionally build the replacement home would be step one, and the garage would then be replaced on the same existing foundation. In approving this variance, we will note that The hardship is not the result of any prior action of the applicant. The garage was damaged by a storm, and the size and shape of the existing structures were existing for a very long time. In granting the requested variance, it will not alter the general character of the surrounding area. As previously noted, conditions such as this are very common in the Brownell Street area. In approving this, we will note, just for the record, that we are approving a minimum lot frontage of 29.85, where a reduced 90 is required. I believe that's correct.
Say the frontage is what
The frontage is 29.8 feet. Minimum front yard setback of 11, where 23 is required. Minimum rear yard depth of 22, where 32.2 is required. A minimum front yard setback, backyard, rear yard setback, side yard setback of 1.6 feet, where 13.8 is required. And a minimum lot coverage of 18%, where an adjusted 16.2 is required. Maximum, yes. We will condition this approval on the new construction of both the home and the garage meeting all applicable building code requirements, and that any applicable DEM and CRMC approvals for this construction be received in advance.
Fire and building.
Yes, fire and building.
Are there any further conditions or amendments to the motion?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, so we have a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? So the motion is passed 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. So the last matter is to approve the calendar for the upcoming year. Does anyone know at this point of any conflict or reason why the calendar is circulated would need to be amended?
January 15th for me would be
you
a
will
standing.
not- Yeah, you'll not be here. We know that.
I have a problem with February and April, just ski, kids' vacations, like we go skiing and go to Florida.
February and April. But the rest of the board should be present, so we'll likely be able to carry on. Any other concerns? Is there a motion to approve the calendar?
Make a motion?
Second.
Okay, all in favor of approving the calendar?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so the calendar is approved for 2025.
Make a
If
motion,
there's no other administrative matters, is there a motion to
make a
adjourn?
motion to adjourn.
And seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
And we are now.